Frances Ann Solomon. I'm the CEO of Caribbean Tales Worldwide Distribution. We have four services basically. We are a distribution company. We're the first and basically the only and the biggest. Well, we can't be the only and the biggest, but we're the first and the only full-service distribution company of Caribbean-themed content. We distribute content of all genres and lengths and everything that is by for about Caribbean people, themes, ideas. Well, as I said, we have four services. So through the distribution company, we also have a training program called the Caribbean Tales Incubator Program, where we actually make content. We develop, we work with producers to create new content. And then we have a film festival that takes place in September alongside the Toronto International Film Festival in Toronto. It's now in its 10th year. And we have a distribution company, Caribbean Tales Flicks. And we also have a video on demand platform, Caribbean Tales TV. So coming to Discop, over the years what we found is that Africa is really our natural partner in terms of content, because obviously people Caribbean people came from Africa, many of them, large populations came through slavery to the Caribbean region and settled there. So the influence of Africa is very, very strong in our region. So 40%, 50% of our populations, if not more, of Trinidad, but in some islands it's 80%, 90% of the population are actually of African origin. And this is something that perhaps Africa is only now kind of remembering, if you like, that there are people of African heritage, not just in the Americas, but in South America, in the Caribbean, And so we are coming home. We're bringing our content home. We share a history. We share a lot of elements of culture. We share our stories. We look alike. There are huge similarities. And in fact, when I first started Caribbean Tales Worldwide Distribution, Africa was Mnet was our first buyer. So we're coming to sell our content to the continent. We're also coming to build partnerships, to co-produce content, new content. We're coming to find content to take to our region. We had a pitch this morning for a project that we're making right now called Hero, which is about a man called Ulrich Cross, who's from Trinidad and Tobago, but who actually came to Africa in the 50s and was part of the independence movements in that area. Our stories do dovetail with African stories, and so from experience, I know that African people, there's a thirst for our content, as there is back home. Now there are all kinds of incentives as well that are available in our region and in particularly South Africa, which benefit Caribbean producers and that will benefit South African producers. For example, in Trinidad, we have very, very good rebate system. And there are other islands that offer similar possibilities. I don't know about locations. I come to the Caribbean, okay? It's beautiful, okay? But so we don't really need beautiful locations to come here, but we do need great partners, and I know that myself, some of my best partnerships have been formed in South Africa and also in Ghana, where we finished shooting last year. I just feel that the synergies between our perspectives and our stories, and also to some extent you were talking about the burgeoning African market, the fact that the industry is now coming to voice on the continent, not just in South Africa, but across the continent, in Kenya, in Ghana, in a lot of other countries. Indigenous stories are finding their feet, and that also is happening in our region. So it's an exciting time. There's an explosion of content coming out of our region, born of the digital revolution to some extent. 5-10 years ago, who knew about Caribbean film, But now there's really definitely a buzz. We have literally hundreds of young filmmakers and seasoned filmmakers telling incredible stories and telling them really well. the biggest stumbling block, obviously, not particularly in South Africa, because there is an infrastructure and there's funding committed, is, a viable, you know, sustainable business model for the creation and distribution of content, of film and television content. That's a problem in Africa, generally, and it's a problem in the Caribbean region. There's no shortage of talent. There's no shortage of great stories, and real and skill level, because people travel there. We have film schools and stuff. The difficulty, and for example, in Cuba, highly skilled film um, tradition, but we lack an infrastructure. For example, in South Africa, you have the DTI, you have the NFEF, you have private financiers who get involved. You have a cinema chain who will, to some extent, distribute local content, and so on. But we are putting that in place now. We are beginning to put in place rebates, and I see that reflected in other. I think, for example, in Kenya, there might be rebates now. There may be a tax system to support producers. Ghana, they're talking about it. South Africa exists. That's been so for a decade, or a couple of decades, maybe 15 years or so. So we are slowly coming on stream with some of those infrastructural things that allow producers to develop a sustainable livelihood around production. And then a big obstacle really is distribution. Getting it in, first of all, creating brand, fighting against Hollywood and those kinds of things to create a brand for Caribbean film. That has been what we have really taken on and been relatively successful in over the past 10 years. When we first started this company, there was no such thing as Caribbean film, But now really there is a buzz. People are saying the Caribbean and so on. And I really do think we take some credit for that, because a lot of the islands, we have an additional problem in that all the little islands are isolated. So, Jamaica will go, well, we're actually Jamaica. We're not Caribbean. And Trinidad will go, we're Trinidad, and we're not Caribbean. And throughout, we've been going, you can't have a film industry with a population of 1 million people. We have to look at the entire region and the diaspora as our audience. And so making those links, actually making those links, I mean, that's a key piece of why we're here, is to build those relationships that allow us to expand our audience base and therefore expand our markets, And that in turn, obviously, supports sustainability in the long term.